She'd retreated to the Tarkine wilderness to escape humanity's constant disappointments. Ranger Maya Diaz thought she'd seen everything these ancient forests could offer, until that misty autumn morning, when the military-trained German Shepherd emerged from the fog, its tactical harness bulging with a weathered backpack. Her instincts screamed danger, but inside that mud-caked pack lay something that would shatter her carefully constructed isolation and force her to confront the very thing she'd been running from, a second chance. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over the Tarkine forest, ancient rays filtering through thousand-year-old myrtle beech trees. Their massive trunks, some wider than a car, created natural cathedrals of dappled light and deep shadow. Within this primeval landscape, Ranger Maya Diaz conducted her morning patrol, her footsteps nearly silent on the moss-covered path she'd walked hundreds of times before. At 38, Maya moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had made the wilderness her home. Her olive-toned skin had weathered from years under the Tasmanian sun. Fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the only betrayal of the decade she'd spent in this remote outpost. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, her ranger uniform worn but meticulously maintained, habits from another life she couldn't quite shake. The two-room ranger cabin that served as her home and base of operations sat in a small clearing, surrounded by trees that had witnessed centuries of human history. Its weathered timber walls and corrugated metal roof blended into the forest, much as Maya herself had attempted to disappear into her role as guardian of this isolated corner of paradise. She paused at the edge of Devil's Ravine, a steep gorge that marked the eastern boundary of her patrol area. The morning mist clung to the tops of the trees below, creating an otherworldly landscape that still took her breath away, despite the countless times she'd witnessed it. This view, this moment of solitude in nature's cathedral, was why she'd chosen this posting, the most remote ranger position in the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area. "Just another day in paradise," she murmured to herself, the phrase both affirmation and armor against the memories that still occasionally surfaced despite her best efforts to submerge them. 5 years ago, Maya had been Senior Ranger Diaz, head of the Special Wildlife Operations Team for the Department of Conservation. Her team had specialized in tracking and stopping international wildlife trafficking rings, work that had earned her both commendations and enemies. She'd been good at her job. Too good. The operation in Sumatra should have been her crowning achievement, months of undercover work culminating in the planned rescue of over 30 endangered orangutans destined for private collectors across Asia and the Middle East. Instead, it had become her greatest failure. Someone had leaked their operation details. The traffickers had been waiting. 2 of her team members died in the ambush. The orangutans, along with their captors, disappeared without a trace. The official inquiry had cleared her of wrongdoing, but the whispers remained. Had she missed something? Had her leadership been flawed? Worst of all was the question that haunted her nightmares. Had someone on her team betrayed them, rather than stay and fight the internal politics and sideways glances? Maya had requested transfer to the most isolated posting available. The Tarkine position had been vacant for 3 years, too remote, too lonely, too disconnected for most rangers to tolerate for long. For Maya, those qualities made it perfect. Now her days followed a comforting routine. Morning boundary checks, afternoon maintenance of trails and infrastructure, evening reports sent via the satellite connection that provided her only regular contact with the outside world. The rhythm of solitude had become her sanctuary, the wilderness a balm for wounds that wouldn't heal in civilization. Maya checked her watch, a rugged tactical timepiece that had survived the Sumatran jungle and now kept faithful time in the Tasmanian wilderness. 7:15. She had 2 more boundary sections to check before returning to the cabin to monitor the weather systems moving in from the west. The Meteorological Service had warned of potential severe storms later in the week, which meant she needed to secure any vulnerable equipment and prepare for possible flooding along the lower trails. She continued along the ridge trail, her trained eyes constantly scanning for signs of disturbance. This far into the protected area, human visitors were rare, permits required and strictly limited. Most of her encounters were with wildlife. Tasmanian devils, wallabies, and the occasional wedge-tailed eagles soaring overhead. The trail dipped into a grove of ancient ferns, their prehistoric fronds creating a green tunnel that echoed with the calls of native birds. Maya moved through this familiar landscape, her senses attuned to its normal rhythms, which is why she immediately noticed when something changed. The birds had gone silent. She stopped, hand instinctively moving to the radio at her belt, another habit from her previous life. The silence was unnatural, the kind that typically signaled a predator's presence. But the Tarkine's apex predators weren't large enough to create this level of alarm among the bird population. A human intruder, then. Maya moved off the trail, using the massive fern fronds as cover as she scanned the surrounding forest. The morning mist still clung to the lower areas, limiting visibility. She listened intently, filtering out the natural sounds of the forest, the distant creek, the rustle of leaves in the gentle morning breeze. There, a rhythmic movement through undergrowth, too deliberate for wildlife, coming from the northern boundary. Something was approaching along the old forest road, a restricted access point that only emergency vehicles and authorized personnel could use. Maya silently made her way toward the sound, moving from cover to cover, with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years tracking both animals and humans through wilderness. As she neared the old road, the mist began to thin, allowing glimpses of the packed earth path that hadn't seen vehicle traffic in months. The sound grew clearer, not the heavy footfalls of a human hiker, but something else, something with 4 feet, moving with purpose, despite obvious fatigue. Maya crouched behind the massive root system of an ancient myrtle beech, her hand now resting on the hunting knife at her belt. Through gaps in the mist, she caught her first glimpse of the intruder. A dog, a large German shepherd, moving with the disciplined gait of a working animal despite obvious exhaustion. Its coat was dulled with dust and mud, but Maya could still make out the distinctive black and tan markings. Most striking was what the dog carried, a tactical harness fitted with pouches and, most conspicuously, a weathered backpack secured across its shoulders. This was no ordinary stray. The animal moved with purpose, stopping occasionally to test the air before continuing definitely along the road toward the ranger station. The harness was military-grade, the backpack secured with the kind of technical fasteners used in specialized operations. Maya's mind raced through possibilities, a search and rescue dog separated from its handler. But there were no active SAR operations in this region, and she'd received no alerts about missing personnel. A hunter's companion that had strayed? Hunting was strictly prohibited in this protected area, and this animal's equipment went far beyond what any legal hunting operation would use. As she considered, the dog suddenly stopped, head lifting as it caught her scent on the shifting breeze. Rather than growling or retreating, it turned directly toward her position, ears forward, body alert, but not aggressive. Their eyes met through the undergrowth, Maya's wary human gaze connecting with the intelligent assessment of the shepherd. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with deliberate slowness, the dog lowered itself to the ground, still watching her, and released a soft whine that carried clearly through the morning air. The sound broke something in Maya's careful professional distance. This wasn't just a stray animal. It was exhausted, possibly injured and clearly trained. A working dog far from where it belonged, carrying something it considered important enough to protect through what must have been a long journey. Maya slowly stood from her hiding place, hands visible, voice calm as she addressed the animal. "Easy, boy. I'm not going to hurt you." The shepherd's ears perked at her voice, but it remained where it was, watching her with an intensity that felt almost human. It whined again, this time with a slight shift of its head toward the backpack it carried. "You've come a long way, haven't you?" Maya said, taking a careful step forward. The dog watched but didn't retreat. "What are you doing out here all alone?" As she moved closer, the dog's condition became clearer, ribs showing beneath its dull coat, paws raw from extensive travel, small cuts and abrasions along its muzzle and legs that spoke of a difficult journey through rough terrain. Despite this, the animal maintained a dignified posture, its focus unwavering as Maya approached. When she was within 10 feet, the dog slowly rose again, every movement speaking of bone-deep weariness, controlled by exceptional training. It took 3 careful steps toward her, then stopped, as if offering her the chance to close the final distance. Maya knelt, bringing herself to the dog's level, extending her hand palm down in a non-threatening gesture. "It's okay. You're safe now." The shepherd approached the final few steps, nose delicately testing her scent. Something in its assessment must have satisfied it, because the dog then pushed its muzzle against her hand, the universal canine gesture of trust. "Good boy," Maya said softly, feeling the first genuine connection to another living being she'd allowed herself in years. She gently ran her hand along the dog's neck, checking for a collar or identification tags, finding only a weathered tactical harness with no identifying markers. The dog leaned into her touch briefly, then stepped back, once again turning its attention to the backpack it carried. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't a random encounter. The dog had brought this pack to her deliberately. Maya's years of training kicked in, caution momentarily overriding compassion. "What have you got there, boy?" The backpack was military grade, designed for operational durability rather than civilian use. Its olive drab fabric was mud-stained and weathered, secured to the dog's harness with specialized clips that would prevent accidental detachment. Most concerning was the deliberate absence of identification. No name tapes, no unit patches, no insignia of any kind. In her previous life, such anonymity would have immediately signaled potential danger, the tactics of those operating outside official channels, often with illegal intent. Yet the dog's demeanor contradicted those concerns. This wasn't an animal, trained for aggression or protecting contraband. Its every action conveyed urgent purpose, a mission that required human assistance to complete. Maya carefully examined the pack without removing it, checking for obvious dangers, wires, unusual bulges, anything that might suggest a trap or weapon. Finding nothing immediately alarming, she addressed the dog again. "I need to take this off you. Is that okay?" The shepherd responded by shifting its position, presenting the side where the main release clip was located, another indication of its exceptional training. With careful movements, Maya released the specialized clips and lifted the backpack from the dog's harness. The animal sighed audibly as the weight left its shoulders, but remained alert, watching as Maya set the pack on the ground between them. The backpack was heavier than she'd expected, its contents shifting with a solidity that suggested something more substantial than documents or personal effects. The top flap was secured with both a zipper and a weatherproof cover, designed to protect contents from the elements. Maya hesitated, years of operational caution warring with the urgency of the situation. In her former role, protocol would demand she call this in, wait for backup, possibly even for a specialist team to examine unknown contents from an unidentified source. But she was alone here, miles from the nearest support. The dog had clearly undergone an extraordinary journey to reach her, driven by training and purpose that overrode its own physical limits. Whatever was in the pack was important enough for this animal to risk its life delivering it. "All right," she said, decision made. "Let's see what you've brought me." She unfolded the weatherproof cover and carefully unzipped the main compartment, prepared to move quickly should anything inside pose an immediate threat. The zipper revealed first a layer of protective wrapping, a waterproof tactical poncho secured with careful precision around the contents. Maya unwrapped the protective layer to reveal a specialized transport container, the kind used for temperature-sensitive medical supplies or biological samples. Its surface bore no labels, only a biohazard symbol and a digital temperature display, showing optimal storage conditions were being maintained. Her breath caught. This was no lost hiker's belongings or ranger's equipment. This was precisely the kind of container used in her former operations to transport biological evidence or confiscated wildlife specimens. With increasing trepidation, Maya released the container's secure latches and lifted the lid. Nestled within custom-fitted protective foam lay two objects that immediately made sense of the dog's desperate journey and extraordinary care of its cargo. The first was a small metal case containing 4 clear vials of amber liquid, each labeled with scientific nomenclature she recognized from her time working with wildlife trafficking operations. Snake venom, specifically from the inland taipan, one of the world's most venomous snakes, native to Australia and virtually impossible to obtain through legal channels. Beside this was a ruggedized tablet computer in a specialized protective case, its surface unmarked save for a small insignia she recognized with a cold shock of recognition, the covert symbol of the International Wildlife Trafficking Task Force, the same organization she had worked with in Sumatra. The final item nearly stopped her heart, a small tactical recording device with a single button and a handwritten note attached. "Maya, play me first. Lives depend on it." The handwriting belonged to Director Kearns, her former supervisor and mentor, the man who had recruited her for the Sumatran operation, the man who had defended her during the subsequent inquiry, the man she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Maya stared at the device, the forest around her suddenly seeming very quiet and very large. She looked at the shepherd, who sat watching her with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand exactly the significance of what it had carried so far. "Who sent you?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. The dog tilted its head slightly, then looked pointedly at the recording device. The message was clear. The answers she needed were contained within. Maya's finger hovered over the play button, her carefully constructed isolation suddenly feeling less like a refuge and more like a prison of her own making. 5 years of hiding from her past, 5 years of routine and solitude, 5 years of nursing wounds that never quite healed, all threatened by whatever message this device contained. The shepherd whined softly, the sound carrying both exhaustion and urgency. Whatever journey had brought this animal to her door hadn't been undertaken lightly. Whatever message waited on the device hadn't been sent without serious cause. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya pressed play. Director Kearns' voice emerged from the small speaker, his familiar Australian accent tight with controlled tension. "Maya, if you're hearing this, then Ranger made it to you, which honestly seemed like a bloody long shot. I'm recording this under less than ideal circumstances, so I'll be brief. The Sumatran operation wasn't a failure. It was a setup, but not in the way you think. We've spent 5 years tracking the network, and we've finally located the missing orangutans, along with evidence linking the operation to officials at the highest levels. But our team's been compromised. 2 agents are already dead. The evidence is in this pack. The venom samples prove the connection to the Australian syndicate, and the tablet contains all our intelligence. A pause. Then his voice continued, more urgent. Your name was in their files, Maya. They still consider you a threat. I'm sending Ranger to you because you're the only person outside the current team who I know isn't compromised. Trust no one from the department. Use the emergency protocol we established for the Borneo contingency. Ranger knows the scent of the person who betrayed your team in Sumatra. Keep him with you. I've programmed the tablet with everything else you need to know. Another pause. Longer this time. When Kearns spoke again, his voice had softened. I'm sorry to drag you back into this, Maya. I know what it cost you last time. But those animals are still alive, being used for a venom harvesting operation that makes what we saw in Sumatra look like a petting zoo. And the people responsible for what happened to your team are finally within reach. If anyone can finish this, it's you. The recording ended, leaving only the sounds of the forest and Maya's suddenly racing heart. She looked at the shepherd, Ranger, who returned her gaze with steady patience. This animal had carried not just physical evidence, but a painful past directly to her doorstep, navigating what must have been hundreds of kilometers of wilderness to fulfill its mission. How did you find me? She asked softly, knowing the dog couldn't answer, yet feeling the question needed voicing. Ranger tilted his head, then looked toward the path leading to her cabin. His meaning seemed clear. They should continue this conversation, somewhere safer. Maya carefully repacked the container, securing it in the backpack. As she stood, the full weight of what had just happened settled on her shoulders, heavier than any physical burden, yet strangely energizing after years of purposeless routine. Her past had found her. The ghost she'd been running from had tracked her to the most remote wilderness on the island. The failure that had defined the last 5 years of her life had suddenly been reframed, not as a mistake she'd made, but as a deliberate act of sabotage she'd survived. "Come on, Ranger," she said, her voice finding a firmness she hadn't used in years. "Let's get you some food and water, and then we have work to do." As they walked toward the cabin, Maya felt something shift inside her, a reawakening of the person she'd once been, the ranger who didn't just observe and report, but acted when action was needed. For 5 years, she'd hidden in plain sight, protecting trees and trails, while the deeper wounds of her past remained unhealed. Now, an exhausted shepherd with intelligent eyes had delivered not just evidence of crimes continuing in her absence, but something far more precious, a chance at redemption, at justice, at truth. Maya Diaz, who had retreated to the wilderness to escape humanity's constant disappointments, was about to be disappointed no longer. The path ahead would be dangerous, the outcome uncertain. But for the first time in 5 years, she was walking towards something instead of away. The forest seemed to close in behind Maya and Ranger as they made their way toward the ranger cabin. What had been a familiar trail that morning now felt charged with new significance. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shift in the canopy above, registered differently to Maya's heightened senses, her operational awareness reawakening after years of dormancy. Ranger kept pace beside her, despite his evident exhaustion, his training overriding physical limitations. Maya found herself unconsciously matching her stride to his, the two of them moving through the forest with the synchronized efficiency of teammates rather than strangers who had met barely 30 minutes earlier. "We're almost there," she said, softly, more for her own benefit than the dog's. Another half-kilometer. The cabin appeared through the trees, its weathered timber walls a darker shade against the surrounding forest. Maya paused at the edge of the clearing, scanning the area with the careful scrutiny she hadn't needed to employ in years. Nothing seemed disturbed or out of place. The woodpile neatly stacked against the western wall. The small herb garden. Undisturbed, the solar panels on the metal roof angled precisely as she'd left them. Still, caution prevailed. If Kearns's warning was accurate, if her name truly was in the files of an international trafficking syndicate, then her 5 years of isolation might not have provided the anonymity she'd assumed. "Wait here," she instructed. Ranger, who immediately sat at the forest's edge, alert but stationary, Maya approached the cabin alone, moving in a careful route that kept her out of direct line of sight from any of the windows. She'd installed simple but effective security measures when she first arrived, nothing sophisticated enough to draw attention, but sufficient to alert her to any disturbance during her absence. A single thread stretched across the bottom corner of the doorframe, still intact, the nearly invisible wire running along the window ledge, undisturbed. The particular arrangement of small stones on the path, exactly as she'd left them. No one had entered the cabin since her departure that morning. She signaled to Ranger, who immediately rose and trotted to her side, somehow understanding that they had moved from potential danger to relative safety. The cabin's interior was Spartan by most standards, but represented luxury compared to some of the field conditions Maya had experienced during her trafficking operations. The main room served as kitchen, office, and living area, with a small bedroom and bathroom partitioned off at the rear. A wood stove dominated one corner, though it remained unlit in the mild autumn air. Maya secured the door behind them, then moved efficiently through the space, drawing curtains over the windows and activating the secondary security system, a series of motion sensors covering the clearing around the cabin that would alert her to any approach. These measures weren't standard Ranger equipment. They were remnants of her former life that she'd never quite been able to abandon, despite her belief that she'd left danger behind. Ranger stood just inside the doorway, his disciplined posture maintained despite the trembling in his legs that betrayed his exhaustion. "At ease, soldier," Maya said, the phrase coming naturally, despite the years since she'd worked with tactical K9 units. "You've completed your mission." As if understanding her words exactly, Ranger's posture relaxed. He moved to the braided rug near the wood stove and carefully lowered himself down, a soft groan escaping as his tired muscles finally surrendered to rest. Maya filled a bowl with water and placed it within Ranger's reach, then retrieved a package of dried venison from her supplies. Emergency rations she kept for extended patrols, but which would serve as suitable nourishment for a working dog until she could prepare something more substantial. Ranger watched her movements with intelligent eyes, accepting the offered food with dignity rather than desperate hunger, eating with the measured pace of an animal trained to maintain control, even in extremis. "You're a professional," Maya observed, recognizing in the shepherd the same disciplined restraint she'd once prided herself on. "Military or special operations, not just search and rescue. AWACS trained, I'm guessing. Advanced Working Animal Certification and Specialization, the gold standard for tactical canines deployed in complex mission environments." Ranger continued eating, but his ears twitched at the acronym, confirming her assessment. While the dog ate, Maya turned her attention to the backpack's contents. She cleared the small desk where she normally completed her daily reports, spreading out a clean microfiber cloth before carefully removing the specialized container. The vials of taipan venom gleamed amber under the cabin's lights, each labeled with scientific notation indicating potency and extraction date. Maya examined them with a specialist's eye. Inland taipan venom was among the most potent neurotoxins on the planet. A single bite contained enough venom to kill 100 adult humans. Its legitimate research applications were strictly controlled, with permits required for even the smallest quantities. Yet these vials contained what appeared to be raw, unprocessed venom in quantities that exceeded any legitimate research protocol. The extraction dates indicated regular harvesting over a 6-month period, a systematic operation rather than a one-time poaching incident. She turned her attention to the ruggedized tablet, pressing her thumb against the biometric scanner on its case. The screen remained dark for several moments, then flashed with a sequence of colored lights, a recognition protocol she remembered from her task force days. Whatever security measures Kearns had implemented recognized her biometric signature, granting access without requiring additional passwords. The tablet activated, revealing a home screen stripped of all standard applications. Only 3 icons remained: a file directory labeled Operation Taipan, a communications application with a specialized encryption protocol, and a mapping program Maya didn't recognize. She opened the file directory first, finding a hierarchical structure of documents organized with military precision. The top folder contained a brief mission overview document dated just 3 days earlier: Operation Taipan, recovery of endangered wildlife and prosecution of trafficking network responsible. For Sumatra incident, Operation Canopy, 2018. Primary targets: 34 orangutans, 12 clouded leopards, 16 Sumatran tigers. Secondary objectives: identification and apprehension of network leadership, recovery of bioweapon precursor materials. C. Appendix C. Venom. Harvesting operation. Maya's heart rate accelerated as she scanned the document. The animals from Sumatra, her animals, the ones she'd failed to save, were still alive 5 years later. Not only alive, but part of a much larger operation extending across multiple countries. She navigated deeper into the file structure, finding personnel dossiers, operation timelines, surveillance reports, and financial tracking documents, the comprehensive intelligence package of a major international operation. The most recent files were dated less than a week ago, suggesting Kearns had updated the tablet shortly before sending Ranger on his mission to find her. One folder labeled Sumatra Analysis drew her attention immediately. Inside were documents she'd never seen during the original inquiry: threat assessments, information source evaluations, and internal communications that painted a very different picture than the official conclusion of operational security failure. A single document labeled Traitor Identification Confirmed contained a name and photograph that made Maya's blood run cold. James Harrington, her second-in-command during the Sumatra operation, the man who had been too ill to join the final raid, the colleague who had visited her in the hospital afterward with sympathy and regret. According to Kearns' intelligence, Harrington had been on the trafficking syndicate's payroll for 3 years before Sumatra, feeding them information on multiple operations, culminating in the detailed betrayal that had left 2 agents dead. And a rescue mission in ruins. Maya leaned back in her chair, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. She'd suspected many things in the aftermath of Sumatra: incompetence, bad luck, perhaps even departmental politics interfering with operational planning. But never this. Never betrayal from within her inner circle, from a man she'd trusted. With her life and the lives of her team. "I checked him myself," she whispered to the empty room, memories flooding back. Background, finances, relationships, everything was clean. But the evidence on the tablet was comprehensive. Offshore accounts, encrypted communications, surveillance photos of meetings with known wildlife traffickers dating back years before Sumatra. The kind of evidence that would have required years and significant resources to compile. The kind of evidence that explained why Kearns had never fully accepted the official narrative, why he had continued investigating long after the case was officially closed. Ranger lifted his head from his empty food bowl, watching Maya with an intensity that suggested he understood exactly what she was discovering. If Kearns' message was accurate, this dog had been present when Harrington's betrayal was confirmed, had memorized the scent of the man who had sent Maya's team into an ambush. "You were there, weren't you?" Maya asked, meeting the shepherds. intelligent gaze, with Kearns when they finally put it all together. Ranger's ears pricked forward at Kearns' name, his head tilting slightly as if confirming her assessment. Maya returned to the tablet, navigating to the mapping application. It opened to display a satellite view of Tasmania, with multiple locations marked across the island. One pulsing icon showed her current position in the Tarkine. Another marker blinked steadily at a location on Tasmania's eastern coast, a facility labeled Tasman Biological Research Centre. She zoomed in on this location, finding detailed facility schematics, security protocols, and surveillance photos. The facility appeared to be a legitimate research centre on the surface, with the appropriate permits and public-facing research agenda focused on antivenin development and biodiversity conservation. But Kearns' intelligence told a different story. Beneath the legitimate operation lay a sophisticated wildlife trafficking hub and venom harvesting facility. The building schematics showed hidden areas not included in public plans, specialized containment rooms, secure storage vaults, and a private helipad designed for discreet transportation. More disturbing were the personnel files. The center's director, Dr. Eliza Chamberlain, was a respected herpetologist with impeccable credentials and a history of conservation advocacy. According to Kearns' notes, this public persona concealed her role as a key coordinator in the international trafficking network, using her legitimate research as cover for the extraction and sale of venom to black market weapons developers. And there, listed among the center's security consultants, was James Harrington, now operating under the name James Hayward, but unmistakable in the surveillance photographs. The man who had betrayed Maya's team had transferred his expertise to the very operation they had been attempting to dismantle. The communications application on the tablet suddenly activated, a silent alert appearing on screen. Secure channel established, awaiting authentication. Maya hesitated, her years of isolation making the prospect of reconnection jarring, but the evidence before her left no room for continued retreat. She tapped the authentication icon, allowing the tablet's built-in camera to scan her facial features. After a moment, the screen cleared, revealing a live video feed of a woman Maya recognized immediately, despite the years since they'd last spoken. Sandra Way, former tactical analyst for the Wildlife Trafficking Task Force and one of the few colleagues Maya had genuinely considered a friend. Maya, Sandra's voice came through the tablet's speaker, a mixture of relief and tension. Thank God, Ranger found you. Sandra, Maya acknowledged, her own voice sounding strange to her ears, the tone of the operational specialist she'd once been, rather than the isolated ranger she'd become. I've reviewed the files. Kearns sent quite a briefing package. And the venom samples, they're intact? Sandra's question was pointed, professional. 4 vials, secured in thermal containment. I haven't opened the seals, but they appear undamaged. Sandra's shoulders relaxed fractionally. That's something. At least, we've lost so much in the past week. Kearns, Maya asked, already suspecting the answer from the past tense in Sandra's statement. Compromised during extraction from the research center. He managed to get Ranger and the evidence package clear before they caught up with him. Sandra's professional demeanor cracked slightly. We lost communication 48 hours ago. We have to assume the worst. Maya absorbed this information with a hollow feeling. Director Kearns had been more than a supervisor. He'd been a mentor who had believed in her abilities from the beginning, who had apparently continued believing in her innocence and competence even after she'd retreated from the world. The orangutans, she asked, focusing on the mission rather than the personal loss. Still at the facility, according to our last intelligence, along with dozens of other endangered species. But the venom operation is our primary concern. We've confirmed they're supplying processed neurotoxins to multiple non-state actors. The most recent shipment was intercepted in Singapore, enough weaponized toxin to kill thousands. Maya glanced at the amber vials. And these samples prove the connection between the research center and the illegal operation? Sandra nodded. Each vial has microscopic markers we developed specifically for this operation. Essentially, a chemical signature that proves these came from their facility, not from legitimate research sources. Combined with the intelligence on the tablet, it's enough for an international intervention. Why not go directly to federal authorities? Maya asked, though she suspected the answer. A compartmentalization has been compromised, Sandra confirmed. We've identified at least 3 points of infiltration in regular channels. That's why Kearns went with the Borneo contingency, a completely off-books approach using only personnel from before the Sumatra operation, people he trusted implicitly. The Borneo contingency, an emergency protocol developed years ago for situations where normal operational channels couldn't be trusted. It relied on a small network of pre-vetted safe houses, communication methods, outside standard bureaucracy, and a chain of trusted individuals operating without official sanction. And I'm part of this contingency because... Maya let the question hang, because you're the only field operative with experience against this network who isn't currently under surveillance or compromised. Sandra's expression hardened. And because you deserve to be part of taking them down after what they did to your team. Maya felt a complex surge of emotions, vindication that her instincts about Sumatra had been correct, grief for the colleagues lost both then and now, and a growing resolve that had been dormant for 5 years. "What's the play?" she asked, the operational language returning naturally. "The research center is preparing a major shipment, both animals and processed venom, for transport in 3 days. We need the evidence you have delivered to our contact in Hobart within 36 hours to initiate the intervention protocol." Maya glanced at the map, calculating. "That's nearly 300 kilometers from my position, much of it through difficult terrain. There's a supply drop arranged at these coordinates." Sandra indicated a point approximately 50 kilometers east of Maya's position. "Vehicle, communications equipment, everything you'll need for the delivery. Ranger knows the route. He's done extensive training in that region." Maya looked at the shepherd, who had risen to his feet at the mention of the mission, fatigue seemingly forgotten as he shifted back into operational mode. "And after the delivery?" Maya asked. "That's your call," Sandra replied, her professional tone softening slightly. "The task force would welcome you back, Maya. Kearns made sure your reinstatement paperwork was prepared before this operation began, but if you choose to walk away after the delivery, no one would blame you. The option to simply complete this one mission and return to her isolation hung in the air, a tempting escape route back to the safety of routine and emotional distance. 5 years ago, Maya had chosen retreat when faced with failure and suspected betrayal. Now, with confirmation of that betrayal and a chance at justice, she faced the same fundamental choice. "I'll contact you when I reach the supply drop," Maya said, her decision already forming. "Expect the package to be delivered on schedule." Sandra nodded, understanding the implicit commitment. "The authentication codes and contact protocols are in the tablet. Destroy it after memorizing the essential information. Trust no one outside the Borneo list." The communication ended, leaving Maya alone with Ranger, and a decision that would irrevocably end her self-imposed exile. She moved through the cabin with renewed purpose, gathering essential supplies for the journey ahead. Her Ranger backpack was emptied of routine patrol equipment and repacked with survival gear suited for rapid movement through difficult terrain. lightweight rations, water purification equipment, first aid supplies, and the compact sleeping system she used for extended backcountry operations. From beneath a loose floorboard under her bed, Maya retrieved items she hadn't touched in 5 years, a tactical communications set independent of official channels, a specialized compass with encryption capabilities, and a slim case containing identification documents and emergency resources established during her time with the task force. She changed from her ranger uniform into more practical field clothing, moisture-wicking base layers, reinforced tactical pants with multiple secure pockets, and the high-performance hiking boots she reserved for the most challenging terrain. Over this went a lightweight shell jacket in forest green, designed for silent movement and protection against Tasmania's unpredictable weather. Throughout her preparations, Ranger watched with attentive interest, his posture communicating readiness, despite the journey he'd already completed. Maya prepared additional food and water for him, calculating the calories needed to restore his strength for the next phase of their mission. "You should rest while you can," she told him, arranging a comfortable spot near the wood stove. "We move at first light." As if understanding perfectly, Ranger settled onto the indicated spot, though his alert eyes continued tracking Maya's movements through the cabin. She secured the venom samples in a specialized container from her emergency medical supplies, then transferred the essential information from the tablet to a series of coded notations in a waterproof field notebook. Locations, contacts, authentication codes, and key intelligence about the facility and its security. When she was certain she had extracted everything critical, she removed the tablet's power source and data storage components, applying a corrosive compound that would render them unrecoverable. Night had fallen outside the cabin windows, the forest beyond now a wall of darkness, broken only by the faint light of stars through gaps in the canopy. Maya checked the security system one final time, then allowed herself to sit at the small table, the reality of the day's revelations finally settling fully upon her. For 5 years, she had structured her existence around the assumption that she had failed her team, failed her mission, failed the animals she had sworn to protect. That failure had become her identity, her isolation, both punishment and protection against further harm. Now, with the truth finally revealed, she faced not just a mission, but a reckoning. The animals from Sumatra were still alive. The true betrayer had been identified. The operation she had believed destroyed was continuing under new leadership, and she had been given something she never expected to find in her remote sanctuary, a second chance. Maya looked at Ranger, now sleeping beside the wood stove, his powerful body finally surrendering to the exhaustion of his extraordinary journey. This animal had crossed hundreds of kilometers of wilderness with a vital mission, navigating by training and instinct to deliver truth to someone who had hidden herself from it for years. "Thank you," she said softly to the sleeping shepherd, "for not giving up." In those words, Maya recognized the challenge ahead, not just the physical journey to Hobart, not just the delivery of evidence, but the harder path of reclaiming the person she had been before failure and isolation had reduced her to a shadow existence. Tomorrow would begin that journey, a return not just to operational service, but to purpose, to connection, to the person who had once believed in justice strongly enough to risk everything for it. Maya Diaz, Ranger, wildlife protector, now reluctant operative, allowed herself a moment of fear and doubt before setting them aside. 5 years of hiding had not erased her skills or her determination, merely buried them beneath layers of protective isolation. It was time to remember who she had been, who she still was, beneath the carefully constructed refuge of routine and solitude. Outside, the Tasmanian wilderness continued its ancient rhythms, unaware that within a small cabin at its heart, a wounded guardian had found her way back to the fight. Pre-dawn light filtered through the cabin windows, painting the interior in shades of blue-gray that reminded Maya of countless operational deployments. She moved through her final preparations with practiced efficiency, muscle memory guiding actions that had once been daily routine. The venom samples were secured in a specialized container, then wrapped in layers of protective material and positioned at the center of her pack, where they would be least affected by impact or temperature fluctuations. The field notebook with her encoded mission details was secured in an inside pocket of her tactical jacket, close to her body for both protection and immediate access if needed. Ranger had awakened before her, already alert and waiting by the door. The night's rest had visibly restored him. His posture was straight, his eyes bright with renewed purpose. Maya had prepared a high-calorie meal for him, knowing the energy. Requirements for their journey would be substantial. "Ready for round 2?" she asked, checking his paws for any lingering damage from his previous journey. Finding them healing well, she applied a protective salve to the pads, a wilderness ranger's preparation she'd used countless times for her own feet during extended patrols. Ranger accepted her ministrations with the patient dignity she was coming to recognize as his defining characteristic. This was no ordinary service animal, but a specialized operative with training comparable to human special forces, capable of independent action, complex decision-making, and sustained mission focus under extreme conditions. Maya performed a final security sweep of the cabin, removing any evidence of her true purpose while leaving enough routine items to suggest a standard ranger patrol. She activated a delayed message in the official system that would inform headquarters she was conducting an extended backcountry assessment, a common enough task that would explain her absence for the necessary time frame without raising immediate concerns. The eastern sky had lightened to a pale gold when they finally departed, shadows still clinging to the forest floor as they moved away from the cabin and into the deeper wilderness. Maya set a brisk pace that balanced speed with sustainability, knowing they needed to cover significant ground before the full heat of the day made travel more taxing. Ranger moved alongside her with fluid efficiency, occasionally ranging ahead to scout the path, but never straying far from her position. They communicated with minimal signals, a gesture here, a soft whistle there, developing a working partnership with the natural rhythm of two professionals accustomed to field operations. The terrain grew increasingly challenging as they left the established ranger routes and cut eastward across the heart of the Tarkine. Ancient trees towered overhead, their massive root systems creating natural obstacles that required careful navigation. In places, fallen giants formed barriers 10 feet high, necessitating detours or difficult climbs. By mid-morning they had covered nearly 12 kilometers, maintaining a pace that would have been impossible for most hikers, but represented standard operational movement for someone with Maya's training. She called a brief rest at a small stream, allowing both of them to rehydrate and assess their progress against the map coordinates. "We're making good time," she told Ranger, as she refilled her water containers with the crystal-clear stream. "Water should reach the halfway point by dusk if we keep this pace." The shepherd watched her with attentive intelligence, then surprised her by moving deliberately to the eastern bank of the stream and looking back at her expectantly. "You know a better route?" Maya asked, studying the terrain in the direction. Ranger indicated. The dog's posture was unmistakable, the confident indication of a tracker who has identified an optimal path. Maya considered briefly, then nodded her acceptance. "Lead on, then. Show me what you've got." Ranger moved forward with purpose, selecting a game trail that Maya might have overlooked, a narrow path that wound through the undergrowth in a more direct eastward line than her planned route. As they progressed, Maya recognized the wisdom of the choice. The path followed natural contours that minimized elevation changes, avoiding several steep ridges her original route would have traversed. "Kearns trained you well," she acknowledged after an hour on the new path had saved them significant time and energy. "You've worked this terrain before." Ranger's ears twitched in what seemed like agreement, his pace steady as he navigated the wilderness with the confidence of experience rather than instinct alone. It became increasingly clear that this animal had been specifically prepared for this exact mission, trained on the terrain, familiarized with the routes, conditioned for the distances involved. The realization was both comforting and sobering. Comforting because it suggested Kearns had developed contingency plans long before the current crisis, ensuring that channels existed outside the compromised official structure. Sobering because it indicated the depth of his concerns about infiltration within the agency, concerns that had proven tragically justified. By midday, they had covered nearly 20 kilometers, the forest gradually transforming around them. As they moved from the ancient Tarkine wilderness toward the more varied ecosystems of central Tasmania, the massive myrtles gave way to eucalyptus and drier understory, the terrain becoming more open in places where fire had created natural clearings in recent years. Maya maintained situational awareness throughout, watching for signs of other human presence while simultaneously tracking their progress toward the supply drop coordinates. The tablet had indicated this region was rarely patrolled, a forgotten zone between jurisdictional boundaries where oversight was minimal, perfect territory for clandestine operations or for moving undetected across the island. As the afternoon lengthened, Maya began to notice subtle signs that raised her professional concerns. Twice she spotted trail cameras mounted in trees, not the standard conservation equipment used by park services, but high-end surveillance units with satellite uplink capabilities and motion-activated triggering systems. She carefully avoided their detection zones, guiding Ranger around their fields of view. "Someone's watching these trails," she murmured to her canine partner after they'd circumvented the second camera, "and they've got resources beyond standard government installations." Ranger's alert posture suggested he'd been aware of the surveillance equipment before she spotted it, another indication of his specialized training. He led them on increasingly obscure game trails, avoiding the more established paths where additional monitoring might be expected. By late afternoon, they had entered a region of exposed granite outcroppings, massive stone formations rising from the forest floor like ancient monuments. Maya recognized the tactical advantage these provided. Elevation for surveillance, hard. Surfaces that left no tracks, and natural concealment among the irregular shapes. She directed Ranger toward one particular formation that offered both visibility and protection. A natural fortress with a protected hollow at its base that would serve as their overnight position. The day's journey had covered nearly 30 kilometers of difficult terrain, an impressive distance, but one that left them still 20 kilometers from the supply drop. "We'll rest here until first light," Maya decided, establishing their minimal camp with the efficiency of long practice. No fire, no permanent alterations to the site, nothing that would signal their presence to aerial or ground surveillance. She prepared food for both of them, then settled beside Ranger in the deepening shadows of the rock hollow. The shepherds. Her body provided welcome warmth as the evening temperature dropped, a practical partnership that reminded Maya of countless wilderness deployments where team members relied on each other for both security and survival needs. As darkness fell completely, the stars emerged in the clear Tasmanian sky, brilliant constellations undiminished by artificial light in this remote region. Maya found herself studying them with a perspective she hadn't applied in years. Not just as navigational aids or environmental indicators, but as constants in a universe of change. 5 years earlier, these same stars had witnessed her retreat from purpose and connection. Now they observed her return, changed, wounded, but finally moving forward rather than away. "Tomorrow, we reach the supply drop," she told Ranger, her voice barely above a whisper in the night stillness. And then the real work begins. The shepherd shifted slightly, settling his head against her leg in what felt like both acknowledgement and reassurance. This animal understood missions and purpose in ways that transcended human canine boundaries. He had carried truth across wilderness when all other channels failed, navigating by training and determination to deliver his vital message. Maya leaned back against the cool stone, allowing herself limited rest, while maintaining the situational awareness that had once been second nature. Her mind processed the day's observations, constructing patterns from the surveillance equipment they'd encountered and the tablet's intelligence about regional security. The pieces formed a disturbing mosaic, evidence of systematic monitoring across even remote wilderness areas, suggesting resources and organization beyond normal commercial or government operations. The wildlife trafficking network they were targeting clearly had deeper reach than previously assessed. This realization reinforced the wisdom of Kern's Borneo contingency, operating completely outside official channels, using personnel and resources established years earlier as insurance against exactly this type of institutional compromise. Maya's thoughts turned to James Harrington, the colleague who had betrayed her team in Sumatra, the man whose actions had led directly to the deaths of 2 agents and indirectly to 5 years of her life, spent in isolated penance for failures that were never hers. The tablet's files had included recent surveillance photos of Harrington at the research facility, his appearance altered by time, but his identity unmistakable to someone who had worked closely with him for years. The sight had awakened a complex storm of emotions Maya had thought long buried, anger certainly, but also a deeper sense of personal violation. Trust betrayed was a wound unlike any other. "He was there from the beginning," she said softly, to Ranger, finding unexpected comfort in articulating thoughts she'd carried alone for too long. "Recruited specifically for his knowledge of our methodologies. Every operation he participated in was compromised to some degree. We just never connected the patterns." Ranger lifted his head, his attention focused on her words as if he understood, not just their meaning but their emotional weight. Kearns suspected, but couldn't prove it without compromising active investigations. Maya continued, the pieces finally fitting together in her mind. So he established the Borneo contingency as a completely separate channel, unknown even to senior leadership. And he kept tracking the network all these years, waiting for the evidence that would expose not just the criminal operations, but the institutional infiltration. The shepherd's steady gaze seemed to encourage her continued analysis, providing audience for a professional assessment that had no other outlet. "And now that evidence is in our hands," Maya concluded, her resolve solidifying with each word. Not just proof of ongoing trafficking, but identification of specific betrayals that allowed it to continue. The night deepened around them, the forest's nocturnal sounds, creating a natural symphony that masked their presence from any potential observers. Maya established a watch rotation with Ranger, allowing each of them alternating periods of rest and vigilance, another operational pattern that returned naturally despite the years since she'd last implemented it. During her watch periods, she mentally reviewed the encoded information from the tablet, facility layouts, security protocols, personnel identifications, and operational timelines. The research center's legitimate exterior concealed an elaborate underground facility where the actual trafficking operations took place, specialized containment for endangered species, venom extraction laboratories, and secure storage for biological materials destined for black market weapons development. The intelligence included detailed security assessments, identifying vulnerabilities in both physical and electronic systems. Most concerning were the personnel files, which listed not just facility staff, but collaborators throughout government, agencies, customs officials, conservation departments, transportation security. The network's infiltration extended far beyond what Maya had imagined possible. By first light, she had developed a comprehensive understanding of both the operation they were targeting and the broader network protecting it. The mission parameters Wei had outlined, deliver the evidence to the Hobart contact within the specified time frame, represented only the beginning of what would clearly be a complex international effort to dismantle the entire trafficking structure. Maya and Ranger departed their sheltered position as dawn broke, continuing eastward with renewed purpose. The terrain gradually descended from the Central Highlands toward the more populated eastern regions of Tasmania, though they remained well away from established trails or roadways. By mid-morning, they had covered 10 kilometers, making excellent progress toward the supply drop coordinates. The forest had transitioned to drier eucalyptus woodland, the undergrowth less dense, allowing faster movement with fewer obstacles. They crossed a small river using a fallen log, then ascended a modest ridge that provided visibility of the terrain ahead. Maya paused at the summit, scanning the landscape with both binoculars and professional assessment. The supply drop coordinates were now less than 5 kilometers distant, a clearing within a stand of older growth forest that would provide natural concealment from aerial observation. "Almost there," she told Ranger, who had automatically positioned himself to monitor their back trail while she focused forward. "Time to increase our security protocols." For the final approach, Maya implemented full tactical movement procedures, careful assessment before entering open areas, indirect routing to avoid predictable paths, and regular security halts to listen for any signs of human presence. Ranger seamlessly integrated into these procedures, demonstrating training consistent with high-level tactical operations. They reached the edge of the designated clearing shortly before noon, observing the site carefully before approaching. Nothing appeared disturbed or out of place. A natural woodland opening, perhaps 30 meters across, ringed by mature eucalyptus and dense understory that provided excellent concealment. Maya identified 3 potential entry routes, selecting the one that offered maximum cover and minimal exposure. She signaled Ranger to hold position while she conducted a closer reconnaissance, moving silently through the undergrowth until she could observe the entire clearing from its perimeter. The supply cache was not immediately visible, exactly as proper operational protocol would dictate. Maya searched for the indicators Kearns would have established, finding them in the specific arrangement of rocks near the base of a lightning-scarred eucalyptus on the clearing's eastern edge. She whistled softly, signaling Ranger to join her. The shepherd appeared beside her moments later, moving with the same silent efficiency she employed. "Let's see what Kearns left for us," Maya said, approaching the marked tree and locating the concealed access point, a section of ground that appeared natural but revealed an artificial structure when the covering layer of soil and vegetation was removed. Beneath was a waterproof tactical container secured with a biometric lock similar to the tablets. Maya pressed her thumb against the scanner, receiving the same recognition sequence that confirmed her authorization. The container opened to reveal precisely organized equipment, a set of civilian clothing suitable for urban environments, identification documents in the name of Marina Decker with Maya's photo, a satellite phone different from the model she'd used in her Ranger position, a significant amount of Australian currency, and keys to what appeared to be a vehicle. Most significant was a small electronic device labeled Proximity Alert System, specialized equipment designed to warn of approaches within a defined perimeter. Maya activated it immediately, establishing a security zone around their position that would provide advance warning of any intrusion. "Now, for the transportation," she murmured, examining the vehicle keys. An attached mini tablet activated at her touch, displaying a map with the vehicle's location marked approximately 200 meters north of their position, concealed in a camouflage shelter accessible via coordinates programmed into the device. Maya repacked the essential equipment into her backpack, then carefully restored the cache site to its original appearance. No trace of their presence would remain for any subsequent observers to discover. They located the vehicle shelter without difficulty, finding a modified all-terrain vehicle concealed beneath advanced camouflage materials that rendered it virtually invisible from more than a few meters away. The vehicle was designed for off-road capability while maintaining a civilian appearance that wouldn't attract undue attention once they reached more populated areas. Maya conducted a thorough inspection, verifying mechanical condition and checking for any surveillance devices that might have been placed since Kearns established the cache. Finding everything secure, she prepared the vehicle for departure, stowing their equipment and ensuring Ranger had a protected but accessible position. "Time for the next phase," she told the shepherd, who had already positioned himself in the designated area, his posture communicating readiness for continued operations. "We've got about 6 hours of driving ahead, mostly back roads until we reach the highway system." As Maya started the vehicle, she felt a subtle shift in her operational mindset, a fullness of purpose and focus she hadn't experienced in 5 years. The isolation she had embraced as protection against further pain now revealed itself as what it had always been. Not healing, but hiding. Not peace, but pause. The journey before them represented more than physical distance. It was a return to engagement with the world and its complexities, a reclaiming of the person she had been before failure and betrayal had driven her into wilderness refuge. As they moved away from the cache site, following the carefully plotted route that would keep them away from surveillance and populated areas for as long as possible, Maya glanced at Ranger, finding in his steady presence a reminder of what commitment truly meant. This extraordinary animal had crossed wilderness, carrying vital truth, never abandoning his mission despite exhaustion and danger. His purpose had remained clear, even when the path was not. "We're going to finish what we started," Maya promised, both to Ranger and to herself. "No more hiding." The path ahead led out of wilderness and back into a world of complexity and connection, a world where both danger and purpose waited. After 5 years of retreat, Maya Diaz was finally advancing toward the truth about Sumatra, toward justice for her fallen colleagues, and toward the person she had once been and might become again. The wilderness had been her refuge. Now it would be her strength as she carried its lessons back into the fight she had abandoned too soon. The transition from wilderness to civilization occurred gradually as Maya guided the vehicle along increasingly. Established roadways. The dense forests gave way to scattered farmland, then to the outlying communities that formed the periphery of Tasmania's more populated eastern regions. After 5 years of isolation, even these modest settlements felt jarringly complex to Maya's senses. Too much movement, too many variables, too many potential threats. She maintained strict operational awareness as they traveled, constantly scanning for surveillance or pursuit while presenting the casual demeanor of a civilian driver. The vehicle Kearns had provided performed admirably, its modified engine delivering power while maintaining fuel efficiency for their extended journey. Ranger had settled into a watchful rest beside her, his posture relaxed but alert. Occasionally, his ears would prick forward at a passing vehicle or roadside movement, his training allowing him to distinguish between routine occurrences and potential concerns without unnecessary reaction. They stopped only once, at a remote service station where Maya refueled the vehicle while maintaining minimal interaction with the attendant. She had changed into the civilian clothing from the supply cache, casual but professional attire that transformed her from wilderness ranger to unremarkable professional woman traveling with her dog. The identification documents provided a complete cover identity, including backstory materials she had memorized and then destroyed. Marina Decker, environmental consultant, she murmured to Ranger as they continued their journey. Traveling to Hobart for a project assessment meeting. Nothing remarkable or memorable. The shepherd's steady gaze seemed to acknowledge the operational parameters, remain inconspicuous, attract no attention, maintain cover integrity until reaching the Hobart contact point. As they approached the outskirts of Hobart in the late afternoon, traffic increased significantly. Maya navigated through the flow with practiced ease, though her internal tension mounted with each kilometer that brought them closer to urban density. After years in wilderness silence, the cacophony of city sounds, vehicles, construction, human voices, created a sensory assault she hadn't prepared for. Focus on the mission parameters, she reminded herself, employing the centering techniques she'd once used routinely during high-stress operations. Identify the contact point, deliver the evidence package, maintain operational security throughout. The contact coordinates led them to an industrial district near Hobart's harbour, a zone of warehouses and shipping facilities where activity continued around the clock. Maya drove past the designated location twice, conducting thorough counter-surveillance checks before determining it was safe to approach directly. The facility appeared to be a legitimate marine research equipment supplier, its facade displaying appropriate signage and security measures consistent with a business handling specialized technical materials. Maya parked in the designated visitor area, attaching Ranger's service dog vest, another item from the supply cache that would explain his presence in an urban setting. Operational mode, she told him quietly as they exited the vehicle. Full awareness, no engagement without signal. Ranger's posture shifted subtly, his movements becoming more structured and controlled, the bearing of a working service animal rather than a companion pet. His training in urban environments was clearly as comprehensive as his wilderness capabilities. Maya approached the facility's main entrance, the evidence package secured in an innocuous briefcase. The reception area was staffed by a single attendant, whose professional demeanor suggested security training beneath the customer service exterior. "I have an appointment with Dr. Calloway," Maya stated, using the authentication phrase specified in the tablet's instructions. Marina Decker, regarding the Tasman Basin samples. The receptionist's expression remained neutral, but her eyes registered recognition of the code phrase. "Dr. Calloway is expecting you. Please follow me to the secure assessment room." They were led through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Biometric scanners, surveillance systems, and multiple staff members, whose positioning suggested tactical training rather than scientific specialization. Maya noted every detail, mapping the facility's layout against potential exit routes should the situation deteriorate. The assessment room proved to be a secure communications center disguised as a marine research laboratory. Equipment displays and specimen containers created an effective facade for what was clearly an operational hub with advanced technical capabilities. A woman waited inside, her posture and situational awareness immediately identifying her as the operational contact despite her civilian clothing. She dismissed the receptionist with a nod before activating additional security measures that sealed the room from external surveillance. "Verification sequence Alpha 7 Tango 9, she stated, watching Maya carefully. "Response sequence Echo 4 Sierra Delta," Maya countered, completing the authentication protocol established in the tablet's instructions. The woman relaxed marginally, extending her hand. "Commander Helen Reeves, Task Force Special Operations. I believe you have something critical for us." Maya transferred the briefcase, maintaining chain of custody protocols as she detailed the evidence package's contents and significance. 4 venom samples with tracking markers, confirming production at the Tasman Biological Research Centre. Full intelligence package encoded in my field notes, including facility schematics, personnel identifications, and network connections. Commander Reeves accepted the materials with professional efficiency, transferring them immediately to a specialized containment unit integrated into the room's equipment. The samples will be analyzed and verified here, then transmitted to international enforcement partners through secure channels. The intelligence will be processed through separate systems to maintain compartmentalization. She turned her attention to Ranger, who had maintained perfect operational discipline throughout the exchange. Kearns said this K9 was his finest asset. Glad to see he made it to you intact. He found me in the most remote section of the Tarkine, Maya confirmed. Carried the initial evidence package across terrain that would challenge most human operators. His training is exceptional. Beyond exceptional, Reeves corrected. Ranger is the product of our advanced cognitive development program, specially bred and trained from birth for complex, independent operations. He can recognize and track over 200 specific human scent signatures, distinguish between virtually identical chemical compounds, and make tactical decisions based on training scenarios. There are fewer than 10 animals with his capabilities in the entire program. Maya looked at Ranger with deepened respect, understanding now why Kearns had trusted this animal with such a critical mission. This wasn't merely an exceptionally trained working dog, but a specialized operative with capabilities approaching those of human agents in certain domains. "What's the operational timeline?" Maya asked, returning to mission parameters. "International. Intervention is scheduled for 48 hours from now," Reeves explained, activating a secure display that showed multiple facility locations across Southeast Asia and Australia. Simultaneous raids on 7 connected operations with the Tasman Centre as the primary target. Your evidence completes the authorization requirements for full multinational engagement. She studied Maya with professional assessment. Kearns left explicit instructions regarding your role in the operation moving forward. You have 3 options. Reeves outlined the alternatives with military precision. Option 1, complete evidence transfer and withdraw. You receive a new identity package, relocation resources, and security monitoring indefinitely. Your involvement ends here. Maya nodded, acknowledging but not selecting this option. Option 2, provide intelligence support from secure position. You join the analytical team working from this facility, providing historical context and operational insights based on your previous engagement with the network. No field involvement. Again, Maya acknowledged without committing. Option 3, full operational reactivation. You join the tactical team targeting the Tasman facility with specific responsibility for identifying and securing the wildlife assets your team originally tracked in Sumatra. The third option hung in the air between them, the path of greatest risk but also of most direct engagement with the unfinished business that had haunted Maya's isolation for 5 years. There's something you should know before deciding, Reeves added, her professional demeanor softening slightly. The tactical team assigned to the Tasman facility already has a designated lead, Agent James Harrington. Maya's blood ran cold. That's not possible. Harrington is working for the trafficking network. He betrayed my team in Sumatra. The tablet had conclusive evidence. The tablet had selective evidence, Reeves interrupted, activating another secure display that showed surveillance images of Harrington at various locations over a 5-year timeline. Harrington wasn't the traitor. He's been working deep cover within the network since 3 months after Sumatra, placed there specifically to track the animals and identify the higher-level operators. She brought up additional files showing operational reports, surveillance transcripts, and verification protocols. His position was known only to Director Kearns and 2 oversight officers. The appearance of betrayal was necessary to establish his credibility with the network leadership. Maya struggled to process this revelation, 5 years of certainty suddenly undermined. But the evidence on the tablet, the offshore accounts, the meetings with known traffickers, all constructed as part of his cover legend, Reeves explained. The actual traitor was senior analyst Victor Chen, who had access to all operational plans and financial resources. He was identified and quietly contained 3 years ago, but we maintained the narrative of Harrington's betrayal to protect his deep cover position. The room seemed to tilt around Maya as she absorbed this information. For 5 years, she had carried the weight of betrayal by someone she had trusted, allowing that belief to justify her retreat from purpose and connection. Now that foundation had been pulled away, leaving her suspended between what she had believed and what appeared to be reality. "Why wasn't I told?" she demanded, professional composure momentarily cracking. "I was the field team leader. I had a right to know." "Your reaction to Harrington's apparent betrayal had to be genuine," Reeves stated, her tone matter-of-fact rather than apologetic. "The network had informants in the medical facility where you recovered. Your subsequent withdrawal from operations and isolation in Wilderness posting actually strengthened his cover story. Your visible breakdown confirmed the significance of his betrayal to network observers." Maya felt a cold clarity descending as the pieces shifted into new alignment. Her pain, her isolation, her 5-year retreat hadn't just been personal failure. It had been an unwitting contribution to an operational deception of extraordinary duration and complexity. "Kearns used me," she said, the realization both painful and oddly liberating. "My reaction became part of the cover." "Kearns protected you," Reeves countered. "He could have had you pulled back into operations at any point, used your skills elsewhere. Instead, he honored your need for distance while establishing the Borneo contingency as your way back when you were ready." The position in the Tarkin was arranged specifically because it provided both the isolation you sought and a secure location for potential reactivation if needed. Maya turned away, processing this revelation while maintaining external composure through sheer professional discipline. Her years of wilderness isolation suddenly appeared in a new light, not simply retreat, but reposition, not just hiding, but holding pattern. Her ranger duties had kept her operational skills intact while providing the recovery time her psychological wounds required. And Kearns had ensured she remained untainted by the institutional compromise that had grown around the investigation. A clean asset preserved for the moment when truth could finally be revealed and justice pursued. "James is alive," she said finally, the personal implications finally penetrating the operational assessment. "He didn't betray us." "He's more than alive," Reeves replied. "He's been continuing the mission you began together for 5 years, waiting for the opportunity to complete what your team started in Sumatra. And now, that opportunity has arrived." Maya looked at Ranger, finding unexpected stability in the shepherd's steady presence. This animal had carried truth across Wilderness when all human channels had failed. Truth that was proving both more complex and more hopeful than she had imagined possible. "What does Harrington know about my involvement?" she asked, professional, focus reasserting itself. "Only that Kearns established a contingency for evidence delivery," Reeves answered. "Your identity has been protected in all operational communications. He doesn't know you're the asset who delivered the final evidence package." The tactical implications were clear immediately. If Maya chose the third option, full operational reactivation, she would be entering a field situation with a team leader who had no advance warning of her participation. The potential for operational friction was significant, particularly given their shared history and years of separation. Yet the mission focus was equally clear. The animals from Sumatra, her animals, the ones she had pledged to protect and failed, were still alive, still suffering in captivity, still being exploited by the very network she had once tracked. And now, finally, the opportunity to complete their rescue had materialized. 5 years ago, Maya had retreated from failure, taking with her the belief that betrayal had destroyed everything she had worked for. Now she faced the truth that the mission had never ended. It had continued without her, carried forward by the colleague she had believed betrayed them all. "I need 10 minutes, she told Reeves, professional courtesy between operators who understood the weight of such decisions. "Take 15, Reeves responded, moving toward the communications array. "I have verification protocols to complete with these samples." Maya led Ranger to a quiet corner of the secure room, kneeling beside him to create a small island of privacy in the technological environment. The shepherd settled beside her, his presence a stabilizing counterweight to the emotional turbulence of the revelations. 5 years, she said softly, speaking as much to herself as to Ranger. 5 years, believing a lie that justified hiding from the world. 5 years thinking I'd been betrayed, when actually I was being protected. Ranger's intelligent eyes seemed to offer neither judgment nor absolution, only the steady attention of a being committed to purpose beyond self. "If I walk away now, I'm choosing isolation when I know the truth," Maya continued, working through a decision process aloud. "If I stay in support role only, I'm choosing safety over direct action. If I rejoin the tactical team, I'm choosing to face both the mission and the man I believed betrayed me." The options represented more than operational choices. They were existential pathways: retreat, partial engagement, or full commitment to reclaiming her interrupted purpose. For 5 years, Maya had defined herself by failure and betrayal, constructing an identity around wounds that justified withdrawal from meaningful connection and impact. The Ranger role had provided structure and limited purpose, but always with the understanding that it represented retreat rather than advancement. Now she faced the opportunity to redefine herself, not as a victim of betrayal seeking refuge, but as an agent of justice, resuming her rightful place in a mission that had never truly ended. The animals still needed her. The mission still required her expertise, and James Harrington, the colleague she had mourned as lost to betrayal, had been carrying forward their shared purpose through years of dangerous isolation. If he had maintained his commitment through 5 years of deep cover operation, 5 years of constant danger, deception, and moral compromise required to maintain his position within the trafficking network, how could she justify continued retreat when the opportunity for decisive action had finally arrived? Maya rose to her feet, Ranger standing with her in perfect synchronization. Her decision wasn't just about operational assignment, but about the person she chose to be moving forward. Defined by purpose rather than pain, by commitment rather than caution. "Commander," she called, turning back to Reeves with renewed clarity, "I'm selecting option 3, full operational reactivation with the tactical team." Reeves nodded, neither surprised nor questioning. "Briefing begins in 20 minutes. You'll deploy with the advanced team at 0400 tomorrow." She gestured to a secure locker at the side of the room. "Your operational equipment is prepared. Tactical gear, communications, identification, and weapons authorization. Standard field kit for wildlife recovery operations." Maya moved toward the indicated preparations, feeling the familiar focus of pre-deployment routine settling over her. The uncertainty and emotional turbulence remained present, but contained, channeled into operational readiness rather than personal dwelling. "What about Ranger?" she asked, glancing at the shepherd who had automatically shifted into pre-deployment positioning. "Ranger has specific mission parameters for the Tasman facility operation," Reeves explained. "He's been training for this particular target for over 2 years. His primary objective is scent identification of specific animals from the Sumatra group. Orangutans he was familiarized with through scent samples preserved from the original operation." The operational elegance of this approach struck Maya immediately. In a facility potentially housing dozens of endangered species, rapid identification of specific animals would be critical for efficient evacuation and evidence collection. Rangers' extraordinary scent discrimination capabilities would cut through the chaos of a tactical operation to locate precisely the animals needed to prove the connection to Sumatra. "He's the living link between Sumatra and the current operation," Maya realized aloud. "The only asset who can positively identify those specific animals without DNA testing or documentation." "Exactly," Reeves confirmed. "And given your history, with the original operation, you're the optimal handler for this particular mission. You know what those animals look like, how they behave, and what specific evidence to document for prosecution." The synchronicity of purpose between human and canine operator created a natural partnership for the mission ahead. Ranger had found Maya in wilderness isolation, delivered the truth that reconnected her to purpose, and now would work alongside her to complete the rescue mission that had been interrupted 5 years earlier. As Maya began her pre-deployment preparations, she felt the weight of isolation lifting, not forgotten, but transformed into something that strengthened rather than limited her. The wilderness had been her refuge, teaching her self-reliance and clarity. Now those same qualities would serve her return to purpose and connection. Tomorrow would bring the tactical operation and the confrontation with James Harrington, the colleague she had believed betrayed her, but who had instead carried forward their shared mission through years of dangerous isolation. That reunion would require its own reckoning, its own reconciliation of truth with 5 years of wounded belief. But for now, Maya focused on the immediate operational requirements, her hands moving through equipment checks with muscle memory that transcended the years of absence. Beside her, Ranger maintained perfect deployment discipline, his presence a reminder that some commitments transcended personal pain to serve higher purpose. The Wilderness Ranger had become an operational asset once again. The retreat had become an advance. The wounds remained, but now they strengthened rather than weakened her determination to complete what had begun in Sumatra 5 years earlier. Maya Diaz had stepped out of shadows into purpose, carrying with her both the pain of the past and the possibility of completing a mission that had never truly ended. The Tactical Operations Center hummed with controlled activity as Maya completed her pre-deployment preparations. The facility's research facade had given way to its true function, a fully equipped staging area for high-risk field operations, with communications arrays, weapons caches, and specialized equipment for wildlife recovery missions. Commander, Reeves had assembled a 12-person tactical team drawn from multiple agencies, each member selected for specific expertise relevant to the Tasman facility operation. Maya observed their preparations with professional assessment, noting the disciplined efficiency that spoke of extensive experience in similar missions. Her own equipment had been prepared with attention to her specific role, tactical gear optimized for speed and flexibility rather than heavy confrontation, specialized tools for wildlife handling and evidence collection, and communications equipment linked to both the command center and Ranger's monitoring systems. The Shepherd had been fitted with his own operational gear, a lightweight tactical harness equipped with audio, visual recording capabilities, specialized scent collection tools, and location tracking that would function even in the facility's underground sections. His calm focus during these preparations demonstrated once again the extraordinary training that made him a true operational asset rather than merely a support animal. Maya had just completed her weapons check, confirming the function of both. Her standard sidearm and the specialized tranquilizer system for wildlife management when the operations center door opened to admit the tactical team leader. Even after 5 years, she would have recognized James Harrington anywhere. His physical appearance had changed, hair now shorter and threaded with silver at the temples, frame leaner and harder than she remembered, a new scar tracking along. His jawline, but his movement patterns and operational presence remained distinctively his. He entered with the focused energy she remembered from dozens of previous operations, already in mission briefing mode as he addressed Commander Reeves without noticing Maya's presence across the room. Final facility schematics confirmed through maintenance contractor, he reported, transferring data from a secure device to the command center's main system. Updated security rotation shows 3 additional guards on overnight shift, likely response to increased shipment preparation activities. Reeves acknowledged the information with professional efficiency, then gestured toward Maya. Your advanced team has been assembled. Final asset has arrived with the evidence package. Harrington turned, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on Maya. For a fraction of a second, his professional composure cracked, eyes widening in genuine shock before operational discipline reasserted control. The moment was so brief that only someone who knew him well would have detected it at all. Ranger found her, Reeves explained. The minimal explanations sufficient between veteran operators. Evidence package secured and verified. Full operational reactivation approved. Harrington absorbed this information with the rapid processing. She remembered from their field operations together. His gaze moved from Maya to Ranger and back again, tactical assessment visibly integrating this new element into existing plans. The K9 asset was scheduled for handler assignment from available. Tactical team, he noted, his voice neutral but with underlying tension Maya recognized. Operational parameters require specific scent discrimination capabilities for the Sumatra specimens. Parameters unchanged, Reeves confirmed. Asset deployment optimized based on handler experience and operational history. The formal operational language maintained professional distance while they process the unexpected reunion. 5 years of separation, with Maya believing Harrington a traitor and Harrington knowing she had suffered unnecessarily to maintain his cover, created a chasm that could not be bridged in the midst of pre-deployment preparations. Briefing in 10 minutes, Reeves announced, addressing the entire tactical team. Final equipment checks and communications verification before transport to forward staging area. As the commander moved away to coordinate with the communications specialists, Harrington approached Maya with careful control. Up close, the changes in him were more apparent, the deep lines around his eyes speaking of years under constant pressure, the hypervigilance in his movements suggesting the toll of long-term deep cover operations. I didn't know, he said simply, professional communication with personal meaning beneath the surface. Kearns kept your involvement compartmentalized from my operational awareness. I only learned the truth about Sumatra today, Maya responded, matching his tone of contained emotion beneath operational focus. For 5 years, I believed you were the one who betrayed us. Harrington's jaw tightened fractionally, the only visible reaction to words that must have landed like physical blows. Operational necessity. Deep cover required absolute credibility with network leadership. Your genuine reaction to perceived betrayal was an asset. The clinical description couldn't hide the human reality beneath, that her pain and isolation had served as authentication for his infiltration of the trafficking network, that while she had retreated to Wilderness believing him a traitor, he had been advancing deeper into darkness, carrying forward their shared mission. You continued. The mission, Maya acknowledged. Professional respect cutting through the emotional complexity. 5 years undercover, with the people responsible for killing our team members. The mission never ended, he confirmed, his gaze steady, but with shadows beneath the professional exterior. The animals survived, the network expanded, the opportunity for comprehensive dismantling finally materialized. The tactical briefing signal interrupted before either could navigate further into the personal territory beneath their operational exchange. Some conversations could not and should not happen in the heightened focus of pre-deployment. The deeper reconciliation would have to wait until the mission was complete. "We have work to do," Maya stated, the simple phrase carrying acknowledgement of both operational priority and the unresolved past between them. Harrington nodded, professional mode fully engaged. "Ranger's capabilities are central to target identification once we breach the containment sections. You'll operate with advance. Team, primary focus on specimen identification and evidence collection." The comfortable familiarity of operational planning provided structure for their interaction, roles and responsibilities clearly defined, personal complexities subordinated to mission requirements. This was the foundation they had built during years working together before Sumatra, the professional partnership that had made them an effective field team. The tactical briefing unfolded with military precision, Commander Reeves outlining the overall operation while Harrington detailed the specific approach to the Tasman facility. Maya absorbed the information with focused attention, integrating new intelligence with her understanding of the trafficking network's methodologies. The Tasman Biological Research Center maintained legitimate operations on its upper levels, actual scientific research that provided both cover and laundering mechanisms for the illegal activities concealed below. The facility's underground sections contained specialized areas for wildlife holding, venom extraction, and biological processing, all carefully hidden from regulatory oversight through elaborate security systems and compartmentalized access. Primary targets remain the Sumatra specimens, Harrington emphasized, highlighting specific sections of the facility schematic. Orangutans are housed in Section C, lower level 3, additional endangered species throughout adjacent containment areas. Venom processing laboratory in Section F, with shipping preparations currently underway for major movement scheduled for tomorrow. He detailed the tactical approach, a coordinated entry through 3 access points, with Maya's team focusing on the wildlife containment sections, while additional teams secured the processing laboratory and administrative areas where evidence of financial operations would be found. Rangers' scent discrimination capabilities will be critical for rapid identification of the Sumatra orangutans, Harrington continued, acknowledging the specialized role without directly addressing Maya. DNA verification would require time we won't have during active tactical operations. The K9 asset can identify specific individuals based on scent markers preserved from the original operation. Throughout the briefing, Maya noted the changes in Harrington's operational style. Harder edges, more contingency planning for potential betrayal or compromise, the hypervigilance of someone who had spent years surrounded by enemies while presenting as an ally. Deep cover operations exacted their toll in subtle ways, reshaping even the most resilient operators to survive constant threat. When the briefing concluded, the team moved into final preparations for transport to the staging area, a warehouse facility located 20 minutes from the Tasman Center that would serve as their last position before deployment. Equipment was secured, communication systems verified, and team assignments confirmed with practiced efficiency. Maya found herself working alongside Harrington as they reviewed the specialized equipment for wildlife handling and evidence collection. Tranquilizer, systems calibrated for various species, documentation tools for establishing chain of custody, and transportation containers designed for safe movement of distressed animals. The orangutans, she said quietly, as they verified the specialized primate transport equipment. How many survived from the original group? 17 confirmed through visual identification, Harrington answered, his focus on equipment checks, not hiding the significance of the number. From the original 34, the others were lost to stress, inadequate care during transport, or experimental procedures. The confirmation of survival, alongside the acknowledgement of losses, crystallized the stakes of their operation. 17 lives that had continued despite the failure of the original rescue attempt. 17 beings that had endured 5 years of captivity and exploitation, while Maya retreated to wilderness and Harrington infiltrated their captors' organization. They're still using them for behavioral experiments alongside the venom harvesting, Harrington continued, his clinical tone belied by the tension in his hands as he checked specialized restraint systems designed to protect both animals and handlers during evacuation. Cognitive testing, drug reactions, psychological stress responses. The research has both legitimate applications and weapons development potential. Maya absorbed this information with professional focus, channeling the emotional response into operational preparation rather than personal reaction. The animals had survived through 5 years of unthinkable conditions. Their responsibility was to ensure they survived the rescue operation as well. Transport in 5 minutes, the operations coordinator announced. Final communications check and team confirmation. As the tactical team assembled for departure, Maya found Ranger waiting beside the equipment she had been assigned, his operational harness secured, his bearing communicating readiness for deployment. She knelt briefly beside him, checking his equipment with the same care she applied to her own. "We're going to find them," she told him quietly, the promise meant for both the shepherd and herself. "And this time, we're bringing them home." Ranger's steady gaze seemed to acknowledge both the mission parameters and the deeper meaning beneath them. The completion of a purpose interrupted 5 years earlier, the fulfillment of a commitment that had never truly ended. The transport to the staging area proceeded under communications silence, each team member focused on their own pre-deployment mental preparations. Maya used the time to review the facility schematics one final time, memorizing evacuation routes and contingency plans for various scenarios. Beside her, Ranger maintained calm vigilance, his training allowing him to conserve energy while remaining fully alert to his surroundings. His presence provided a center of stability amid the complex emotions stirred by the day's revelations and the impending operation. The staging warehouse had been prepared with methodical attention to operational security, blackout measures on all windows, multiple exit routes secured, and surveillance systems establishing a perimeter alert zone around the entire facility. As the tactical team entered, they moved directly to final equipment staging areas, organized by mission role. Maya and Ranger were directed to the wildlife recovery section, where specialized equipment had been arranged for their specific responsibilities. The tranquilizer systems were designed for humane immobilization, the transportation containers, equipped with monitoring systems to ensure animal welfare during evacuation, and the documentation tools prepared for establishing evidence chains that would withstand international court scrutiny. As she completed her final equipment checks, Maya became aware of Harrington approaching, his movement still recognizable despite the tactical gear that now obscured his appearance. He carried additional equipment that hadn't been included in The standard deployment kit. Scent markers, he explained, presenting a specialized case containing sealed vials. Preserved samples from the original Sumatra operation. Ranger will need these for final confirmation of individual identifications. The case represented another piece of the operational continuity she had been unaware of, tangible evidence that the mission had continued without her, that preparations for eventual recovery had been maintained throughout the years of her absence. "You kept samples from all of them," she observed, recognizing the systematic labeling system she herself had established during the original operation. "Kearns preserved everything from Sumatra," Harrington confirmed. "Blood samples, hair samples, scent markers, anything that might eventually connect those specific animals to the trafficking network." He never accepted that they were lost permanently. The revelation added another dimension to Maya's understanding of the past 5 years. While she had retreated to wilderness, defining herself by failure and betrayal, others had continued working toward eventual success, maintaining the evidence, developing the intelligence, infiltrating the network, and training specialized assets like Ranger for the eventual recovery operation. Her isolation hadn't been the end of the story, but merely a pause in her participation. The mission had continued without her, waiting for the moment when truth could be revealed and justice finally pursued. "Final briefing in 10 minutes, the operations coordinator announced. "Mission deployment at 0230 hours. Harrington remained beside Maya, the tactical gear creating an anonymity that perhaps made it easier to address what lay beneath their professional interaction. "There wasn't a way to tell you," he said finally, his voice low enough that only she could hear, "about the true nature of the operation, about Chen being the actual traitor, about the animals surviving. Because my reaction had to be genuine," Maya acknowledged, understanding the operational logic even as the personal impact remained raw. "Believing you betrayed us made me leave. Leaving protected me from further compromise. And strengthened my cover," Harrington added, the admission clearly difficult despite its operational necessity. "Your visible breakdown over my betrayal convinced the network I was genuine, that I had successfully destroyed the most effective trafficking investigator they had faced." The cold clarity of this operational calculus settled over Maya, the recognition that her pain had been not merely collateral damage, but an asset in the longer mission. Her retreat to wilderness had served purposes beyond her own healing. It had contributed to an operational deception that had ultimately led to this moment of potential justice. "Did Kearns know I would be sent Ranger when the time came?" she asked, the question probing the extent of the contingency planning that had shaped her life without her knowledge. "The Borneo Protocol identified you as the primary evidence receiver if primary channels were compromised," Harrington confirmed. "Your position in the Tarkin was selected specifically for its isolation and defensibility. Ranger was trained on those terrain features for over a year before deployment. The systematic nature of these preparations, extending years into the past and anticipating precisely the scenario that had ultimately unfolded, spoke to operational planning of extraordinary depth and foresight." Maya had believed herself forgotten by the agency that had once valued her skills. In reality, she had been preserved as a clean asset, positioned for eventual reactivation when the mission required her specific capabilities. "Was anything in my life actually my own choice?" she asked, the question emerging from a place of personal reckoning rather than operational focus. Harrington's expression reflected understanding of the existential weight behind her words. "The choice to stay," he answered after a moment's consideration. "Kearns established the position, but you chose to remain there for 5 years. You could have left at any point, returned to operations elsewhere, built a different life. The Isolation was your decision, even if the opportunity for it was deliberately created. This perspective offered a fragile balance between agency and manipulation, acknowledging both the operational architecture that had shaped her options and the personal choices she had made within those parameters. She had chosen retreat and isolation, even if the circumstances that made that choice possible had been arranged by others. "And now?" Maya asked, the question encompassing both the immediate operation and the longer path beyond it. "Now we complete what we started in Sumatra," Harrington replied, professional focus providing structure for the complex emotional terrain. "We recover the animals, secure the evidence, and dismantle the network that has continued operating while we've been separated by necessary deception." The simplicity of this mission focus offered solid ground amid the shifting sands of revealed truth and personal reckoning. Whatever else had changed, whatever else had been hidden or manipulated, the core purpose remained constant. Protect the vulnerable, hold accountable those who exploited them, and uphold the commitment to justice that had defined their professional partnership from the beginning. "Final team assembly," the operations coordinator called, mission briefing commencing. Maya and Harrington moved toward the central briefing area, Ranger maintaining perfect position beside them. In this moment of focused pre-deployment, the years of separation seemed to compress, operational partnership reasserting itself through the familiar patterns of mission preparation they had established long before Sumatra had driven them onto separate paths. Commander Reeves conducted the final briefing with precision, outlining last-minute intelligence updates and confirming the deployment sequence. Each team member received final mission parameters specific to their role, with Maya and Ranger designated as primary identification assets for the wildlife recovery component. "Satellite monitoring confirms standard security patterns at the facility," Reeves concluded. "Entry points secured as planned, transportation assets in position for specimen evacuation, international coordination confirmed for simultaneous operations. Against connected network nodes." She surveyed the assembled team with professional assessment. "This operation represents 5 years of intelligence development, deep cover infiltration, and evidence collection. The network responsible for the Sumatra incident has expanded operations to include bioweapon development alongside wildlife trafficking. Your mission tonight will dismantle their central research and development facility while securing both evidence for prosecution and the endangered species being exploited." The briefing concluded with final communications checks and team acknowledgements. As the operators moved toward transport vehicles, Maya found herself alongside Harrington once more, the moments before deployment, creating a space where operational focus and personal history temporarily aligned. "Whatever happens in there," she said quietly, "the truth matters. Finding it, facing it, even when it's not what we expected." Harrington met her gaze with the direct engagement she remembered from their years working together. 5 years. "In deep cover teaches you that truth is the only thing worth holding on to," he responded. "Everything else can be sacrificed for the mission, but without truth as the foundation, none of it means anything." In this exchange lay the beginnings of reconciliation, not of the past, which could never be undone, but of their understanding of it. Both had spent 5 years believing narratives that were incomplete or deliberately constructed. Both had made sacrifices based on those beliefs. Both now faced the challenge of integrating newly revealed truths into their comprehension of those years. "Transport ready," the team leader announced. "Deployment sequence initiating." Maya and Ranger moved toward their designated vehicle, the weight of the approaching operation providing focus amid the emotional complexity of the day's revelations. 5 years after the failure in Sumatra, they were finally advancing toward Completion of the interrupted mission, toward justice for fallen colleagues, toward freedom for captive beings, toward truth that had been hidden by layers of necessary deception. The Wilderness Ranger had become an operational asset once more. The isolated survivor had rejoined the fight that had never truly ended without her. And somewhere in the Tasman Biological Research Center, 17 orangutans who had endured 5 years of captivity waited for the promise made in Sumatra to finally be fulfilled. The tactical convoy moved through Hobart's industrial district in unremarkable vehicles, commercial vans with corporate signage that blended perfectly with the area's normal night traffic. Despite the vehicles' mundane appearance, their interiors had been modified for tactical deployment, with specialized equipment secured and team members positioned for rapid exit upon arrival. Maya sat with Ranger in the lead vehicle, conducting final checks on the specialized scent identification equipment that would be critical to their mission. The shepherd remained composed despite the vehicle's movement and the palpable tension among the tactical operators, his training allowing him to maintain operational readiness without unnecessary energy expenditure. Through the partition separating the driver's compartment, Maya could see Harrington conferring with the navigation specialist, their low voices inaudible, but their focused intensity clear. 5 years had changed his operational demeanor. A harder edge now visible beneath the professional control, the hypervigilance of someone who had spent years surrounded by hostiles while presenting as an ally. The convoy maintained communications silence as they approached the outer security perimeter of the Tasman Biological Research Center. The facility presented a conventional research campus appearance, modern buildings with expansive glass facades, professionally landscaped grounds and standard security measures visible at entry points. This legitimate exterior concealed the true nature of operations in the underground levels, where endangered species were held and exploited for both profit and bioweapon development. The vehicles separated according to pre-established routes, approaching designated entry points from different directions to avoid alerting security to a coordinated operation. Maya's team targeted the service entrance on the facility's eastern perimeter, a loading dock used for supply deliveries and, according to intelligence, occasional transportation of wildlife specimens. Harrington signaled the final approach sequence as their vehicles slowed near the service road leading to the loading dock. The tactical team performed last-minute equipment checks with the economy of movement that spoke of extensive experience in similar operations. Maya secured Ranger's tactical harness, ensuring the specialized recording equipment and scent collection tools were properly positioned. "Primary target confirmation is our priority," she reminded the team quietly. "Evidence collection protocols take precedence over speed. These animals and the documentation of their conditions are what will dismantle the entire network." The operators acknowledged with minimal gestures, professional focus, leaving no room for unnecessary communication. Each understood that this operation represented the culmination of years of intelligence gathering and deep cover work, the opportunity to finally bring down a trafficking network that had operated with impunity for too long. The vehicle stopped in a predetermined position that provided concealment from the facility's external security cameras. The team deployed with practiced efficiency, maintaining low profiles as they advanced toward the service entrance, using the approach route identified through Harrington's intelligence. Maya moved with Ranger, their progress synchronized as they navigated the carefully mapped path to their entry point. The years in Wilderness had not diminished her operational movement skills. If anything, daily navigation through challenging backcountry had enhanced her ability to move silently through complex environments. The service entrance was secured, with electronic access controls and surveillance cameras, all documented in the intelligence briefing. The specialized team member responsible for electronic countermeasures moved forward, applying a device to the security panel that would create a momentary loop in the surveillance system while temporarily disabling the alarm protocols. 30 seconds, the specialist murmured over the tactical communications system. Surveillance neutralized. Now! Harrington led the entry team through the temporarily vulnerable access point, their movement timed precisely to the security system's manipulated cycle. Maya and Ranger followed, the Shepherd maintaining perfect operational discipline despite entering an unfamiliar environment filled with potentially distracting scents and sounds. Once inside, the team split into pre-assigned elements according to mission objectives. Maya, Ranger, and 3 specialized operators formed the Wildlife Recovery Unit, their target the underground containment areas where endangered species were held. Harrington would lead a separate team to secure the venom processing laboratory and critical documentation, while a 3rd unit focused on the administrative sections containing financial evidence. Maya's team moved through the service corridors, following the facility schematic memorized during mission preparation. The legitimate research sections operated primarily during daylight hours, leaving these areas minimally staffed during night operations. Their path took them toward a service elevator, identified as providing direct access to the underground levels where wildlife specimens were held. The elevator required security authorization, which the electronic countermeasures specialist bypassed, using credentials extracted from Harrington's intelligence gathering. The descent to the lowest level occurred in operational silence, each team member mentally reviewing their specific responsibilities once they reached the containment areas. Maya activated Ranger's specialized scent identification equipment, preparing the system to document and verify the specific orangutans from the Sumatra operation. The Shepherd's focused attention sharpened visibly as they approached their primary objective, his training activating in response to operational cues. The elevator opened to reveal a sterile corridor markedly different from the conventional research facility above. Here, the true nature of the operation became evident: reinforced security doors, specialized containment protocols, and environmental controls designed for housing wildlife under research conditions. 2 security personnel at the monitoring station registered surprise at their appearance, reaching for communications equipment before the tactical team neutralized them with swift efficiency, non-lethal techniques that rendered them unconscious without raising alarms. Control point secured, the team leader confirmed over tactical communications, proceeding to primary containment section. Maya accessed the security station's monitoring system, quickly identifying the layout of the containment areas. The SUD schematics provided during mission briefing proved accurate. 17 separate holding units arranged along a central corridor, with specialized research areas branching off at intervals. Section C confirmed, she reported, indicating the area designated for primate specimens. Biometric security on access points. The team's technical specialist moved forward, applying a specialized bypass to the security panel. Biometric countermeasure deployed. Access in 15 seconds. Maya prepared Ranger for the critical identification phase, presenting the scent markers preserved from the Sumatra operation. "Find them," she instructed quietly. "Find our orangutans." The Shepherd processed the scent samples with focused concentration, his specialized training activating as he committed the specific identifiers to memory. This extraordinary capability, distinguishing individual animals based on scent markers collected 5 years earlier, represented the culmination of both advanced genetic selection and years of specialized training. When the security panel indicated access granted, the team moved into the primate containment section with tactical precision. The corridor opened into a laboratory environment with individual containment units visible through observation panels, sterile enclosures with minimal environmental enrichment. designed for research subjects rather than living beings with complex needs. Maya felt a surge of focused anger at the conditions revealed, the stark contrast between these artificial cells and the lush Sumatran forests these orangutans should have inhabited. She channeled the emotion into operational focus, directing Ranger toward the containment units while the team secured the laboratory area. The shepherd moved with purpose, approaching each observation panel methodically, his specialized sensory capabilities processing information at a level beyond human perception. At the third unit, his behavior changed, a subtle but unmistakable indication that triggered the positive identification protocol in his training. Maya moved to the observation panel, her breath catching as she recognized the orangutan inside, despite the years of captivity. Mawar, a female they had tracked for weeks during the Sumatra operation, distinctive for the unusual coloration pattern on her right arm. The animal showed visible signs of captivity stress, repetitive movements, poor coat condition, and the vacant gaze common to primates in inadequate environments. Primary target confirmed, Maya reported over tactical communications, her voice steady despite the emotional impact. Initiating documentation and evidence collection protocols. The specialized evidence technician deployed recording equipment, capturing comprehensive documentation of the containment conditions, while Maya accessed the identification system attached to the unit. The electronic records confirmed what Ranger had already determined through scent identification. This was indeed one of the orangutans from the Sumatra trafficking operation. Her presence here, irrefutable evidence of the network's continuous operation. Ranger continued his methodical identification process, moving from one containment unit to the next with focused purpose. His specialized training allowed him to distinguish between similar-appearing orangutans with extraordinary accuracy, identifying each individual from the preserved scent markers despite the years of separation. Within 20 minutes, the team had confirmed the presence of 14 orangutans from the original Sumatra group, each identification documented through multiple verification methods to establish unassailable evidence chains. 3 individuals from the original intelligence estimate were not located in this section, raising operational questions that Maya noted for subsequent investigation. Primary identification complete, she reported. 14 subjects confirmed from Sumatra operation, 3 unaccounted for. Roger that, Harrington's voice responded over the tactical system. Venom Lab secured with evidence intact. Documentation team reports significant intelligence materials located in Research Director's office. The communications suddenly carried increased tension as Harrington continued. Be advised, transport logs indicate 3 primates transferred. The medical research section yesterday. Possible experimental procedures in progress. Maya felt cold clarity descending as operational implications became apparent. The mission parameters expanded beyond simple identification and documentation. Now, they faced potential active experimental procedures on animals already traumatized by years of captivity. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.